The detonator released and dropped at their feet. Owen grabbed his wife as she screamed in pain, and they turned their backs to the device, as we scattered for cover. The concussion of the blast knocked us all into the sand. When we stood and turned to face the grisly sight, there was little left of the moisture farmer and his wife. The blast had wiped the flesh from their bones, as neatly as you might wipe dirt from your clothing. All that remained were 2 smoking skeletons lying beside the stairs. Whoever Luke was, he was definitely on his own now. "Burn it. Burn it all," said Rogue. "I don't want any traces of our presence left here," and he walked away, pulling off his bucket, pushing past us. Felth and 1265 stood guard as ETZ. Topoliv. 4120. 0600 and I disappeared down the stairs to set the charges. A short time later we all made our way out of the lower levels and headed for the dropship. Suddenly, the ground beneath our boots shook violently as the first of our charges detonated. A large geyser of sand shot skyward over the farm as still more charges erupted beneath the surface. Smoke billowed from the open pit, the roof of the tech dome and other surface structures as the living quarters beneath were consumed in fire. Our job here was finished. Chapter 10a Wretched Hive. Blade and D. Drake had moved Windy, Deke and Kami out of the office and had them sitting on rocks, leaning against the stone retaining wall on the back side of the power station as they waited. Falker, Dans and Taka completed the search inside with Tyrell. Kami seemed to have shed her fear and become amused with the whole invasion. She sat apart from the others and was laughing when she spoke to D. Drake as he passed by in front of her. "You-1T find anything? Fixer DOESNT have anything that belongs to you, and if the droid he bought has something of yours, take it and leave us alone." D. Drake grinned beneath his bucket as he leaned closer to Blade. "She's a feisty one." Falker appeared above them, peering down from the courtyard above the wall. "Bring em in. Dan's just finished scanning the droid, there's nothing here. Tyrell is done." We re-headed back to the city. Kami stood up with Deke and Windy. "See. I told you, *****. The Corellian YT-1300 coasted on her repulsor field above the spaceport of Mos Eisley as the harbor master granted Captain Solo clearance to land. The ship rolled to the right, then leveled off as she silently disappeared down into the pit of Docking Bay 94. In the captain's chair, Solo began shutting down the systems as the Wookiee sitting beside him began updating the nav computer files. He stood to leave the cockpit and a dangling pair of metallic chance cubes hanging from the overhead instruments struck him squarely on the forehead. "Ow, Chewie. Take these things down, will ya?" This time it was the Wookiee that woofed a laugh at his friend. An annoyed Solo rubbed his head as he turned and walked out. We had been cruising toward Mos Eisley in silence for some time when Rogue unbuckled and stepped across the aisle sitting in the jumpseat between me and 0600. "I just received word from Captain Tyrell. Their group is wrapping things up in Anchorhead. They've completed their investigation of the machinist droid sold to the Toshi station. He says the manager, a repair mechanic, told him he just bought the droid yesterday and paid in full with Imperial credits." Rogue flipped on his holonet field pack and showed us an image of the Anchorhead site as he spoke. Felth and Topoliv leaned in to see. The mechanic, his girlfriend and several local kids were hanging out in the station when our troops arrived. The droid in question was fully scanned, but our missing data was not found. Tyrell and our troops tore the shop apart, scanning and looking for it, but they found nothing. All of the occupants of the shop were questioned thoroughly. The owner and his friends seemed surprised when the Lars place was mentioned. They said the old guy was a bitter old tightwad, and hadn't bought anything from the Jawas in several seasons. The mechanic, Fixer, said Wormy had to work constantly to keep the old broken down droids and evaporators on the Lars place running. He also said Wormy was overdue to pick up some refurbished power converters. He had stripped off several wrecked landspeeders. After further questioning it came out that Wormy was Lars' nephew. Luke. I told him that checked out with what we found at the Lars place. He paused a moment, taking a breath. We have to keep that missing data from making it off-world, and I think the missing nephew, Luke, is the key. We all nodded in agreement. Rogue stood and keyed on his comlink as he walked back to his seat, calling our snitch to alert him. So Luke is the nephew, not a farmhand after all, said ETZ. 0600 went back to cleaning his rifle, as I leaned my head back on the vibrating bulkhead and thought. If I were a young farm boy and wanted to make it off-world with 2 droids, I would be looking for a ship and a pilot. I would have to be looking in Mos Eisley. According to Rogue, as sparsely populated as Tatooine is, there's no other major spaceport to be found. We were going to need strategic roadblocks and patrols monitoring the spaceport docking pits closely, and we need it quickly. That was the only way we would have a chance at locating the missing boy before he slipped away with 1, possibly 2 droids and information so sensitive that it unnerved even Lord Vader. What the hell kind of information was that droid carrying? Asterisk. We marched through the streets of Mos Eisley in the midday sun as I went over and over the events of the busy morning we had had. The flight back from the moisture farm had been a quiet one. Nobody had spoken of what had happened. The 104th Moisture Farm Patrol, or MFP, had been assembled from troops posted all over the known galaxy and sent here to enforce Imperial law without the backing of the Empire or the Legion, and keep the peace among the low-life citizens so the moisture farmers could bring in their harvests without fear. It was their job to keep the planet supplied with the water it needed to continue on. To continue on so the Empire would still have a connection to the low-life citizens when they needed certain services. It was a sick cycle. Keep the scum in check, cultivate it and allow it to grow until you needed it, until it served your purpose. A ragged old man sitting in the sand with his back resting against a wall looked up at us as we passed. He wore tattered wraps and his face was covered in flight goggles and a layer of loose fabric to keep the sand out. He reached out a hand, begging for money. His left forearm was covered in tattoos of women and starships that disappeared up under the loose sleeves of his garment. We ignored his plea for help and kept moving. This morning at the Lars place had been an exercise in how things shouldn't go, and yet, not one of us could have predicted that lunge for the detonator, that fear that drove the old woman to rise up against us, to die so horribly while protecting another. We had arrived on this planet in the midst of something far larger than some stolen intelligence recordings. I could feel it. Deep down in my core. There were forces at play here that went far beyond the scope of a few missing droids and some stolen data. I tried to put it out of my mind as our formation came to a stop. We were at the crossing of the main road into town, and the one leading to the spaceport. Captain Tyrell turned to Rogue. My troops are going to set up several scattered roadblocks. A few of them will set up stations on the side streets heading to the spaceport. I'll man the checkpoint here and question everyone entering the city. You take your men and start a door-to-door search for our missing farm boy and his droid. Hopefully we can keep them from slipping by. Rogue responded. I agree with the roadblocks, but I was going to have our troops stationed out in the corridors leading to the spaceport. We have developed a working relationship with a local that may be a very good source of information for us. He suggested that we position ourselves there to be most effective. I don't think a door-to-door search would prove to be. Tyrell ripped off his helmet and spun back to Rogue, stepping in close to our CO. Let me make one thing painfully clear to you. I am not impressed with your group of outcasts and the dirty gear you don't bother to clean. Yes, I know where most of you have been called in from, and I have never understood the Sandtrooper mentality. You can bet after my troops return to the Devastator, they'll be cleaning their gear before returning to their normal assignments. I am in command of this search and recovery mission, and report directly to Lord Vader. We don't need to drag the local scum into this. At least I speak for my troops when I say we don't need any local help. I am keeping the troops I have from your unit to help man my roadblocks. Felth, you fall in with my group too. Get on with your assignment. 1009, Rogue slowly nodded once, his dislike for Tyrell growing, wishing this encounter had occurred in one of the dark mineshafts on Kessel where no one would have heard the screams he was imagining and the good captain would have disappeared without a trace. Yes sir. Tyrell and several of his men walked to the opposite corner of the street and stopped a merchant with an aging Treadwell droid. Rogue nodded to Dans, Blade, D. Drag, Taka, Falker and Felth as they followed Tyrell. The rest of us continued on to the next side street and began inspections of the shops and residences we found. We searched one quickly and moved along to the next. Asterisk. We had just finished our sweep of a fairly tall building and were on the roof. Taking a moment to catch our breath and sip some distilled water from our packs. It was scorching hot and we had been searching without a break for some time. Rogue, disgusted, pulled off his bucket as he took out his comlink and called out to Gurinden. There was a crackle of silence for a moment or two, and then the voice of our snitch. "I am your eyes and ears, sir, what can I do for you?" The CO thought for a second and then spoke into the tiny comlink microphone. "The captain has ordered us to perform a door-to-door search. We want to be able to patrol the spaceport as we discussed. I want you to position yourself in that general area and inform me if you see any new faces, or anyone that appears out of place. The boy we researching for will be accompanied by a droid or two. Definitely a bipedal protocol model and possibly an astromech model, and will be looking for passage off-world." "As you wish, sir," came the reply. Rogue clipped the comlink back on his belt and pulled his bucket back on as we left the roof to continue our search sweeps. Asterisk. A gigantic Ronto strode through the sandy streets under the beating sun as a battered old landspeeder came around a turn and into view. Tyrell held a hand up, motioning for the young male driver to come to a stop. Davin Felth moved to the rear of the speeder and the captain stepped up to the driver as he eyed the two stowed droids riding in the back, a protocol droid and a blue astromech. "How long have you had these droids?" The boy responded. "About 3 or 4 seasons." The old man sitting beside him turned to face Tyrell and chimed in now. "They re-up for sale, if you want them." Tyrell, completely wrapped up in his self-importance, continued, pressing the occupants for more information. "Let me see your identification." The old man leaned in closer, across the cockpit. Now staring intently at the captain and making a small circle with his fingers as he spoke. "You don't need to see his identification." Tyrell seemed dazed as a moment passed, and then he slowly and very deliberately repeated the old man's words. "We don't need to see his identification." The cloaked and hooded old man spoke again. "These aren't the droids you looking for." As if drugged. Tyrell looked up and spoke now to the members of the 104th working with him. "These aren't the droids we looking for." Playing a mental game, and manipulating the feeble-minded captain, the old man spoke again. "He can go about his business." We couldn't believe what we were hearing. The old man was not only avoiding Tyrell's questions, he was telling him what to say. Felth stared at his captain now with complete disbelief as again Tyrell echoed the old man. "You can go about your business." The old man spoke once more. Now finished with the minor annoyance of Captain Tyrell, and looking away, down the street, expecting to be forgotten within several moments. "Move along." Again, the stunned Captain Tyrell chimed in, wrapping up the encounter and sending the speeder on its way. "Move along, move along." The boy complied, and the well-worn speeder pulled away, heading deeper into the city. The troopers of the MFP stared at each other in disbelief. TD-8733. Dans was the first to break the long silence and speak. "What are you doing? Why would you let them go? They the strongest match to the profile so far, and you just let them ride away without so much as a second glance, much less a questioning." Tyrell became terribly indignant as he rubbed his aching head. "What are you talking about? I didn't do any such thing." The MFP troopers standing around the speeder glanced at each other in disbelief as Tyrell moved to stop the next vehicle. The old man, the boy and the 2 droids had now disappeared into the city. Asterisk. Chalmers Spaceport Cantina, or the Mos Eisley Cantina as it was better known, was situated near the heart of the marketplace and a short walk from the spaceport. When the current proprietor, Chalman the Wookiee, took ownership, there were Imperial troopers from the old squad crawling all over the place. It seems that the previous owners, the Vrieshan brothers, had been running an illegal spice den on the site and for some time had been burying the bodies of those who got in their way in the basement. The frenzy surrounding the scandal eventually died down, and Chalman had completely renovated the place in an effort to help people forget. Since then, Chalman's Cantina has always been considered to be the place, in Mos Eisley to hire or be hired, for pretty much anything one might be interested in. It was a shadowy, cool oasis from the relentless heat of the desert and a haven for locals and pilot regulars with downtime to burn while in port. The worn, brown landspeeder that Tyrell had mysteriously allowed to pass into the city skimmed down the street and floated to a stop adjacent to the front entrance of the cantina. The old man and the boy climbed out and headed inside as the protocol biped lowered the squat body of the astromech unit to the ground and followed the humans toward the door. Inside, the Bith band was pumping out their rhythmic sound over the low roar of dozens of conversations, filling the smoky bar with an upbeat ambience. The old man knew the cantina well, having frequented numerous times over the years. He slipped into the crowd, heading for the bar as the farm boy was directed by Wooer, the bartender, to leave his droids outside. The youth turned and addressed the issue with the gold protocol droid, sending both mechanicals back out to the speeder. Turning, the boy stepped down into the main room and approached the bar. Wooer felt a tugging at his shirt, and turned around to face the young man. Without changing his vacant, gruff gaze, he filled and served the drink order without a word. Then he moved away, leaving the boy standing with his drink beside the Aqualish regular. Ponda Baba, and his companion. Dr. Evazan, a human with a horribly disfigured face. Gurinden, our informant from the planet Kubas, sipped cool water and sat at a table watching the room as the new arrivals settled into the smoky den. He knew that anyone looking to get off-world quickly would most likely come here to hire the ride. His sensitive eyes rolled left and right beneath his protective dark goggles. He watched as the boy that had entered with the droids took a sip of his drink. The old man that came in with him was talking to a pilot at the bar with his back to the youth. Evazan tapped the boy on the shoulder, and started a conversation. The boy didn't seem interested in talking, but Evazan persisted. Gurinden swept his eyes over the bar, settling on Mama Naden, the Ethorian hammerhead in one of the rear booths with the locals Muftak and Cabe. His eyes darted back to the boy as the old man turned and took control of the conversation with Evazan. The good doctor howled, shoving the boy out of the way as he drew his blaster and stepped toward the old man. As the youngster fell backward, he crashed into a table, knocking it over in a spray of spilled drinks and gaming chips. The band stopped playing, and all eyes were on the scene at the bar. Wooer yelled, "No blasters! No blasters!" and dove behind the bar away from the two. Evazan squeezed off a shot which was deflected when suddenly the dim light of the room was shattered as a meter-long shaft of blue energy sprang from a grip in the old man's hand. Then the shimmering, humming blade flicked down and up in a series of precise, controlled strokes, severing Evazan's hand and the arm of Ponda Baba as he rushed to help his friend. They both slumped, howling to the floor, leaving the old man standing alone at the bar. He held the blade defensively before his face as his eyes swept over the room, giving a brief, momentary glimpse of the warrior he once was. He extinguished the blade, returning the handle to a clip on his belt as he moved to help the boy up from the ground. Wooer gave the band a glare, and they began playing again, as if nothing had happened. An intrigued Gurinden took another sip of his water as the old man and the boy followed a towering Wookiee to an alcove table in the back of the bar. The Kuba's spy stopped a human patron passing his table. He handed the human a few credits and sent him out the front door of the bar. He watched him leave, then turned to keep an eye on the aging warrior, the boy, the Wookiee and the Corellian pilot with the red blood stripe on his trousers. Outside the bar, the human patron counted the credits in his hand as he walked out into the street and approached us. "Hey, there's been a scuffle inside there. The hermit just took out two guys at the bar with a lightsaber. Crazy Jedi wannabe." They spoke for a few moments more and he gestured once again back toward the cantina as across the street, the farm boy's droids watched from their position beside the battered, brown speeder. A few moments later, ETZ and I walked through the front door of the cantina, rifles at the ready, stepping down into the main room, pushing past several regulars lounging on the steps. We approached the bar, the crowd parting as we drew near. ETZ spoke to Wooer, "We heard there was a disturbance in here." Wooer gestured to the back of the room, pointing to the old man. We saw who he had indicated, and I replied, "All right, we'll check it out." We both stepped around the end of the bar, wading through the scum clientele and past both dismembered arms on the floor toward a small recessed booth in the rear of the room, where Wooer said the old man and the kid had gone after the incident. The pilot I remembered from our first day at the docking bay sat there with his Wookiee companion, alone now. No old man, no kid. I led the way past the table. ETZ followed, stopping momentarily to lock eyes with the cocky Corellian pilot and the Wookiee. We worked our way past them, as there was no sign of the others, and continued on toward the rear door, exiting to the street outside. They were nowhere in sight. "I don't like this," I said. "I feel like we're really close, and I think they just hired a pilot. Let us go let Rogue and the others know what we found." No comlinks. "I don't want Tyrell in on this, *****. It was now well past midday and the troops at all of our posts were growing restless. The crowds on the streets above the marketplace were filled with people, making our search efforts all the more difficult. -1138 Takas, one of Tyrell's men, meandered away from his post, following a side street, then down a series of steps into the partial shade, and was checking the area surrounding the central marketplace, as the others continued with their interrogations. Satisfied with his quick look around and the nice break from the direct sun, he turned around to head back and rejoin his group when he saw a young man, an old man and two droids, one bipedal protocol and an astromech coming toward him. They stopped dead in their tracks as his gaze moved from the droids back to the humans and he locked eyes with the smiling old man. *****. The sudden static burst broadcast over our comm channels was almost deafening. I dialed down the volume as my helmet display showed that it was originating on a frequency from one of the Devastator's troopers. -1138 Takas. Rogue clicked on his chin mic and paged the trooper. When he got no response, our little group double-timed it through the streets, following the signal source indicator. We made our way down several flights of stairs that led through a terraced marketplace. There were twisting corridors and alleys lined with citizens and merchants. We passed a small droid sale lot, a used speeder lot, and wormed our way through the crowd as the beacon indicated we were almost on top of it. Suddenly Rogue stopped dead in his tracks. 4120 and I almost colliding with him from the abruptness. He turned and backtracked several steps, peering down a side alley. There, a few steps into the shadows, in the center of the path was the source of the comm static. The missing trooper was lying face down, neatly cut in half. His torso lay to one side of the path, his lower body and legs to the other side, the wound cauterized from some great heat. His helmet had been thrown loose as he hit the ground and had rolled up against one of the stone walls. His E11 had been sliced down the center from front to rear. A hand and several fingers lay beside it in the sand. We all stared in disbelief for a heartbeat, then jerked our eyes upward, scanning the rooftops and alleyways to see if we could catch a glimpse of someone that might have committed this crime, or someone who might have seen who did. There was no one to be found. We fanned out to search as Rogue knelt down and picked up the helmet. He pulled his own off, and reached inside TK-1138's, flipping a tiny switch. The information display flickered with static for a moment, and then Rogue was able to see what 1138 had seen in his last moments: a few alleys, some stairs, a used droid lot, a speeder salesman, a few citizens scurrying to get out of his way. Then he stopped walking, turned to the left and looked down an alley, then back to the right to check the other direction. The silent image flickered on the tiny screen inside the dead trooper's helmet. It showed him turning around to go back up the stairs, and then, in center frame was an old man in a hooded robe, a young man and two droids, a biped and an astromech. The old man was smiling as he raised his empty hand from beneath his cloak to wave, but instead, thrust his palm out forcefully toward the camera as his stance lowered and centered, feet planted wide. The trooper and his camera were then thrown into the air and back several paces across the alley into a wall. A flash of white light blipped across the screen from the jarring impact to the camera, and then the image returned, white levels recalibrating as its owner fell to the ground. 1138 rolled and stood up quickly, the dirt of the ground rushing across the little screen. He looked up at a wall as he regained his feet and whirled around toward his attacker. E11 drawn and held out in the lower portion of the video frame. An energy bolt flew from the barrel of the blaster toward the old man's head. In a blur of motion, a blue energy blade flicked up and into the path of the red bolt. There was a flash as the shot collided with and ricocheted off the shimmering blade, inches from the old man's head. The protocol droid shrank in fear, and the boy stared in disbelief. The trooper involuntarily glanced to follow the blocked bolt. Rogue's brow furrowed with concern as he continued to watch the recording. 1138 looked back to the man in brown just as a sweeping arc of blue energy flashed down through the blaster in his hands, splitting it in two. Taking off the fingers that were wrapped beneath the muzzle and the hand on the grip as well. He looked at his severed fingers on the left hand and the smoking wrist stump on his right arm, then looked up as the blue blade blurred once again, slicing through the air and down toward his waist. Then there was static. Rogue switched off the recording and looked back over to the two sections of 1138's body and the assorted hand parts. A Jedi. Here. I thought they had been exterminated long ago. His mind reeled with all the possible implications stemming from this discovery. He pulled his bucket back on and clicked the comm with his chin. All members of the MFP, report to the main corridor leading to the plaza in the lower marketplace immediately. Then he keyed his handheld and paged Gurinden. All of our men heard the message over their comm sets, turned to look at each other and took off running down the main street toward the plaza. Tyrell yelled at the top of his lungs for them to stop, spewing various threats about what happens to troopers who desert their posts. They never looked back. Rogue. 0600. 4120. 1265. ETZ and I were waiting in the open plaza next to the used speeder lot when Dan's Falker, Taka, D-Drag and Blade appeared out of one of the hallways. 0600 waved them over as he spoke to Rogue. The guy running the speeder lot says he just bought this brown, junker landspeeder from a young kid and an old man. He didn't see any droids, but the description he gave fits the two we were looking for. These two are very dangerous. 1265 laughed, turning to Dan's. 0600 turned to face him. The old man took out 1138 and left pieces of him scattered all over the alley over there if you have any doubts. The laughter stopped immediately. Rogue stepped forward. The snitch doesn't have anything yet, but he's working on it now. I want us to stay together and move through the corridor leading to the docking bays. If they have bothered to come this far dragging two droids, they going be trying to leave on a ship from one of these bays. We need to be nearby and ready. I don't care what Tyrell says. As he said this, Tyrell stepped off the bottom step from the streets above and walked over to us. You and your men are all going to find yourself in the brig for deserting your posts and... Rogue interrupted. I've had enough of you. 1138 is dead. An old man traveling with the farm boy left him in several pieces down that alley. Tyrell had no memory of the old man and young kid from the street. Your roadblocks aren't doing the job. Tyrell, they already here. And I don't care if you do report directly to Lord Vader. This city is now our jurisdiction and you are a guest in it. We officially operating outside the Empire. I suggest you remember that. Captain, or you might find yourself the victim of an unfortunate accident. Dan's moved closer to Rogue. You said it was an old man and a kid. Was the old guy wearing a hood? Rogue nodded. Dan's turned to the others that had been with him at the roadblock and then over to Tyrell as he pulled off his bucket. The captain here stopped that old man and the kid out on the road earlier today. He was asking for the kid's identification and then the old man spoke up saying we didn't need to see it. Tyrell kept repeating everything the old guy said and then told them they could go about their business and let them go. Tyrell glared at Dan's. I did not. We never stopped an old man and a boy. The rest of the roadblock crew pulled off their buckets. Yes you did, you don't remember. You let the guy talk back to you and then let him go. How can you not remember? Rogue pulled off his bucket and glanced over to 0600 and on to me. Based on what we saw on 1138's holo recorder, as incredible as it seems, I would say it was a Jedi mind trick. I slowly nodded thoughtfully in agreement. Tyrell spewed. Jedi mind trick. The Jedi are extinct. And pushed his way through us to find his troops. Lord Vader will not find this little joke amusing. Rogue held up the dead trooper's bucket and played the holo recording again for the others to see firsthand what had happened. As the entry ended, the others looked back at the broken body of 1138. Rogue's comlink crackled on his belt. I have something for you, sir. Gurinden had been busy watching. That's what he did. He was a people watcher, a silent observer from the shadows. Rogue unclipped the mic. Yes, what do you have? The electronic voice squawked back. They re on their way to one of the docking bays. Meet me in the main hallway. I am at Bay 85. Then the line went dead. I had been standing close enough to hear the exchange. The Wook and the Corellian, I whispered quietly as I glanced over at 0600. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The veranda of the palace was richly bathed in an orange glow as Bail Organa stood at the railing watching the sun setting far out on the horizon of his beloved Alderaan.